In October of 1347, 12 Genoese ships drifted into the harbor of Messina, Sicily. The dock workers found them filled almost entirely with corpses. The few sailors still alive were covered in blackened, oozing sores, violently coughing up blood, and barely able to stand. Panicking, the city authorities ordered the fleet back out to sea immediately, but the ships had already made contact with the shore. Those 12 ships carried a pathogen that would kill roughly half of everyone living in Europe. Within 4 years, it would empty entire villages and create a demographic hole that would take 2 centuries to fill. People often picture the 1300s as a time of isolated, disconnected communities. In reality, a vast web of overland trade routes already tied East Asia, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean together. For over a century, the Mongol Empire's conquests had enforced a period of stability across this enormous stretch of land, known as the Pax Mongolica. Merchants and goods moved with relative freedom. By securing this overland network, the empire had accidentally engineered a corridor that allowed a deadly pathogen to cross thousands of miles in a matter of months. By the mid-1340s, the disease traveled west along the Silk Road and hit the Black Sea coast. There, an army of the Mongol Golden Horde was laying siege to the Italian trading outpost of Caffa. A chronicler at the time claimed the Mongols hurled their own plague-ridden dead over the city walls to infect the people inside. But modern trade records point to a different cause. A trade embargo had kept the Italians out of the region until 1347. When the ports finally reopened, desperate Italian cities sent ships to collect delayed grain shipments. Rats and fleas nested inside the cargo holds, traveling back to Europe as silent stowaways. Whether it crossed the walls via siege warfare or slipped aboard trading galleys in sacks of wheat, the result was the same. The trade connections humans spent generations building became the exact mechanism of their undoing. This map shows how quickly the disease outpaced anyone's ability to contain it. Starting in Messina in 1347, the infection zones hit the Italian mainland by winter. Within 6 months, it pushed through Italy, crossed into France and Spain, and reached England by June 1348. This image reveals the cause of the devastation. The yellow rod-shaped clusters are Yersinia pestis, a bacterium that hijacked the digestive tracts of fleas, which then fed on human hosts. The infection presented in 3 distinct ways. Bubonic plague caused swollen, blackened lymph nodes. Pneumonic plague attacked the lungs directly, spreading through the air between people. Septicemic plague poisoned the bloodstream itself. In the worst cases, victims died within 24 hours of feeling their first symptom. Medieval physicians, relying on ancient theories of bodily humors, prescribed bloodletting and the burning of aromatic herbs. None of it worked. The only effective defense was arrived at purely by trial and error. Venice eventually forced incoming ships to wait out a 40-day isolation period, a practice they called quarantena, giving us the modern word quarantine. Every defense mechanism society had in place failed. Their foundational understanding of science and medicine had absolutely zero connection to the biological reality of what was killing them. In just 4 years, somewhere between 25 and 50 million people died. That equates to 30 to 60% of the entire European population. Florence alone lost more than half of its 110,000 residents in a little over a decade. The writer Giovanni Boccaccio lived through the outbreak, and his book, The Decameron, describes a city where the sheer volume of corpses completely collapsed the normal customs of mourning. People died alone in empty houses. Existing cemeteries ran out of capacity. In major cities like London, officials were forced to dig emergency mass burial pits to handle the overflow of the dead, packing bodies together in tight, continuous rows. As the bodies piled up, the population turned to the Catholic Church for answers. But the Church could not explain the plague. It could not stop it. It could not even protect its own priests and monks from dying alongside the people they served. That spiritual void gave way to a rational panic. Extreme religious cults like the Flagellants wandered between towns, whipping themselves to appease a wrathful god. Others looked for earthly targets. Baseless rumors accused Jewish communities of poisoning wells, triggering massacres across Germany, France, and Spain. The sheer volume of unexplained death ended millions of lives. In the process, it shattered the authority of the religious, medical, and civic institutions that people had relied on to hold their world together. This chart tracks the total European population over time. You can see the initial drop beginning in 1348, but notice how the line stays suppressed for generations. Recurring outbreaks kept the continent from returning to its pre-plague numbers until the 16th century. This permanent demographic void created an economic paradox. Half the people were gone, but the physical demands of survival remained the same. Fields still required planting, and livestock still needed tending. For centuries, the feudal system ran on the assumption of cheap, captive labor. Serfs were legally tied to the land, but facing a massive labor shortage, the surviving workers found themselves holding bargaining power they had never possessed. If a lord refused to pay higher wages or improve working conditions, a peasant could simply leave for a better arrangement elsewhere. The landowning aristocracy panicked. In 1351, the English Parliament passed the Statute of Laborers, a desperate legal attempt to freeze wages at their old levels and compel workers to accept pre-plague terms of employment. The legislation failed almost immediately. The rigid rules of feudalism were no match for the mathematical reality of supply and demand. By removing half the workforce, the mass death inadvertently snapped the economic chains of captive labor. Having tasted actual economic leverage for the first time, the working class refused to surrender it. When the aristocracy tried clawing back those gains, it provoked violent resistance across the continent, culminating in uprisings like the English Peasants' Revolt in 1381. The old system never recovered its grip. Labor gained a value it would never entirely lose. That shifted balance of power laid the groundwork for a more mobile, commercially driven European economy. The Black Death stands as a catastrophe that altered the mechanics of the medieval world. Through demographic loss alone, it shifted the value of labor, accelerating the decline of feudalism and clearing the path for the commercial economy that would follow.